Greetings, everybody. Nick D Virgilio here at Sweetwater's video studio, hanging out with Matt Halpern and Misha Mansoor of the band Periphery. How you doing, guys?
Good.
We're actually not here to talk about the band Periphery, but we will. We'll talk a little bit for sure. We're here to talk about GetGood Drums. An amazing product you guys have had for quite a while now. It's growing every day. You have some new products coming, so let's go through the history maybe a little bit.
Sure.
How did this product start? Because I know you guys have been working together for a long time, and it sort of bloomed out of the band, didn't it?
It did. The culture of drum programming within our band really stems back to Misha. Before there was Periphery, and I'll let him elaborate on this, but before there was Periphery, I mean, you were writing music in a dorm room.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, basically, I was in college. Instead of going to class, I was programming drums on my gaming computer. Sort of that
Really?
It was that first time where you had these home computers that were like powerful enough to record with, and that was a revelation for me because now I could record music. You know,
This was what, 2005?
No, this would have been like 2002 or 3. Yeah, and like, I'm sure you'll appreciate this, but drums are the backbone of the mix. And you know, when you're writing as a guitarist, I actually started out on drums, but I was focusing on guitar in school because it's hard to play drums without annoying people. So the idea that you could do this quietly on headphones and record an entire song and not bother anyone, and I could be doing it till 2, 3 in the morning.
Sure.
That was a game changer. And all of a sudden, I could just write songs just by myself, post them up online on all these forums I just happened to be a member of.
Right.
I think before that point, sort of drum samplers and all that were very rudimentary and very basic.
Well, so what's funny is in around 2005, I was in a different band completely, and I remember one of my bandmates playing for me one of Misha's demos. And at the time, the project that he had was called Bulb, like light bulb.
Yep.
And my buddy's playing me this stuff, and he's like, "You hear these drums?" And I'm like, "Yeah, who's the drummer?" He's like, "Oh, they're programmed." And I had never heard that level of quality before. There were ghost notes, there were dynamics. It sounded like a drummer was playing. And I didn't know anything about Misha at the time. I just knew that here's this like crazy cool music. Ironically, also was jamming some of like the early Periphery songs with this guy in my band. Never ever with the thought of like, oh, I'll be in this band one day. I mean, there was no thought of that whatsoever. It opened my eyes to what was possible too in terms of sound, and I knew that eventually when I did join the band that was going to be a part of the culture, as I said, because from day one we've been very much a DIY, kind of had a DIY mentality with the band. Our first record, we did it completely on our own at Misha's apartment.
Right.
Recorded the drums on an E-kit, but prior to even getting to that point, we were programming everything, sending demos back and forth. And the benefit, I'd never done that before in a band setting, but the benefit to me as a drummer was like, as I had an idea, I could program it or tell Misha, hey, what about this fill or what about this group? And you get this instant gratification of like, oh, here's what the part sounds like. And it also pushed me, and it still does, record to record, to become a better drummer, because to this day, we still demo everything with programmed drums, and we'll program parts that like I can't play right now.
Right, because you were here a few months ago,
Yeah.
working for Pearl and doing stuff with your new snare drum and all that kind of stuff. And we did a little education video as well.
Yeah.
And this, we'll get back to the product, but this blew me, since you brought this up, it blew my mind. For all the years that I've been playing drums and making records, it was a little bit backwards, how you program the parts and then learn the parts after they were programmed. Because some of the parts are really difficult, at least hearing them back.
Yeah.
And then you pull them off.
It's a process.
It's an interesting way to work, and I've been delving into that a little bit more since we've hung out and thinking about that now too, of how you can come up with parts that when you're sitting behind a kit, you're thinking about it differently than when you're putting stuff into your computer program or something. So it's a neat process, I think.
Well, and I'm very lucky because, as Misha mentioned, I mean, he started with drums. He is a very good drummer. Like, we definitely get each other's style. There's very good chemistry between what we do. He understands me as a player, and he claims that he tries to program with me in mind, but when I hear the stuff that he programs, it's very fresh to me. It's like, oh, I wouldn't have thought of that fill or this accent here or there. So for me, it's a lot of fun to be like, oh, I wouldn't have played that, but I really like the part. I'm gonna figure out how to execute this now. So it pushes me out of my comfort zones all the time. And I think as a drummer, when you bring up the drum programming, or if I tell people that I have a drum sample company, they're like, well, doesn't that defeat the purpose and basically put you out of a job. And it's like, no, it makes my job easier, makes my job more fun, makes me a better drummer.
Sure.
Because inevitably now when we record our albums, we are in a live studio with live drums. And we'll talk about this more as we talk about GGD, but the goal by the time that we're recording is to really not use any augmentation, no processing, no drum samples for our live albums. But the only way that I really can get to the point where I feel confident about those parts and where we can capture the sounds we want is through, like, here's the bar that we've set with the drum programming. Let's try to beat this now, you know? So it's a really good thing to strive for. It takes some time, but...
Well, and the records sound amazing. You know, they're huge sounding and difficult, very cool music in the same respect. So obviously it works for you guys. That's great.
Yeah.
It's interesting what you're saying, though, about like us sort of flipping it, because I think that's the luxury I never really had. I've always been sort of jealous of bands that can get into a room and jam. We all live far apart, and we've never really had many opportunities to jam. So we've been more on the other end. It's like really compositional.
Sure.
And even, you know, just recording whatever in my room or whatever, that was always recording stuff I could barely play. So there's always been this sense of like, the composition is first. We'll kind of figure it out later. Sure. And you just got to step up and learn it. And I've definitely become a better guitarist from just learning how to play and piece together my own compositions, which I could barely pull off at the time, but it's kind of a good way to push yourself.
Sure.
And I think that's been sort of the culture in the band is, all right, yeah, it's difficult, but we'll figure it out. Yeah. Enough practice and you'll figure it out.
You've proven it works. So
yeah,
it works for us, you know?
It feels foreign to even think about doing it another way, or even in other projects that I've been, you know, played with casually over the past couple of years. It's just, it's totally foreign to not do it the way that we do it in Periphery now. Right. So GetGood Drums really was, at that time especially, as we're talking about early on, like it wasn't really a thought until Adam GetGood, or otherwise known as Nolly, joined the band. So Nolly was a very good friend of ours. He came out on one of our first tours and filled in on...
Euro tour, yeah.
Yeah.
First Euro headliner, right?
Yeah, our guitar player decided, he was on stage and trying to like fix something on the stage, stood up on a monitor, the monitor fell, and then next thing you know, his fingers going the other direction.
As he said, we're very DIY. He was a little too DIY that day.
But so Nolly, when he joined the band, I mean, one of his big focuses outside of Periphery was production.
Right.
And he was really cutting his teeth on trying to get involved in every aspect of production. He was producing his own music similar to how Misha was producing music, but really was focused on live drum recording amplifiers. A lot of the things that we do now with GetGood Drums comes from his passion and his sort of curiosity with trying to be a better producer.
Sure.
So when he joined, he and I really started working together on getting the best drum sounds possible, which was kind of, at first, I don't know if you remember, but there were like, I remember when we played overseas on the first tours that he was on as our bass player, he'd be like, hey man, can I tune your drums?
I do remember that, yeah.
You're gonna tune my drums? You're you know,
he was such a stickler for that too.
And at first it was like, oh, fine, I'll let this guy do this, you know? And now I wish he was on every tour tuning my drums every night, because, and this sort of led to where GGD is. I mean, what he was doing, and I didn't know it at the time, was he was honing his process. He was essentially developing a scientific method for tuning. Just was trying to basically figure out, how can I come up with a system that allows me to tune any drum at any time with any kind of drum head that I have at my disposal and make it sound the best it can possibly be. And he just mastered this. He's now, as a bass player, guitar player, has done tons of like clinics and videos on how to tune drums, you know, and he's not a drummer, but has that down. And then we just, again, we kept chipping away at how can we make our actual recordings sound better than what our demos were sounding like with the, you know, programming tools that were available at the time.
Right.
And we managed to achieve this sort of really cool intersection of great sounding, perfectly tuned drums that I think through his sort of tedious focus, he was able to capture the essence of my performance from a dynamic perspective. You know, and again, if you listen to our music, you hear there are a lot of dynamics in the drumming.
Sure.
Yes, it's heavy music, but you have a lot of subtleties with the ghost notes or with different cymbal accents and little things that you want to try to pick apart. He was very focused on being able to get every aspect of that sounding good. So long story short, he and I developed that through just recording with the band, and I think it set a new bar for what previously had been done with our demo process, with what we had at our disposal.
Yeah, anyone who records will probably feel this way, but the production and the mix is kind of half of the sound. A lot of the times, like, there's certain ideas that only really come to life in context. And actually, this was happening sometimes where I'd have an idea and it wouldn't entirely translate. And yeah, the standard that we were setting, you know, for the final product, there was just a bit of a gap. And I think between Nolly and I, we were like, what is that? What are we missing between, you know, the programming tools I was using at the time and the production tools I was using at the time? Like, what is that X factor? I think that's what started getting the ball rolling about, like, can we tackle this? Like, surely if we did this list of things in this certain way, and I think a big part, actually, funny enough, is tuning. Like, what a stickler he is for tuning. But not only that, but his ear is just insane with that. Even when we'd be tracking sometimes, I remember, like, you'd be tracking a part, I'm like, oh, it sounds great. He's like, stop. It's like your snare slipped. I'm like, what? You know? And then, like, you're like, no, it didn't. And then you listen back, and, like, if you really listen, it slipped a little bit, but to him, it's, like, painful. He's like, no, we got to fix that. And you know, you'd have to retake it, yeah.
Well, and now, you know, fast forward, now when we track albums for Periphery, we know it's like, I'm only going to record maybe 32 bars at a time of a song, because inevitably we're going to stop and he's going to listen. He's going to go, this tom slipped, you know, let's tweak it a little bit.
Especially with the way he hits, you know?
Yeah.
Hitting hard, yeah. So it's just become part of the process now. But again, that was what made us feel like, okay, well, there's a huge discrepancy between the demos that we're recording and the final product, and it's not inspiring. So, like, when we were writing and demoing stuff at Misha's place, it was like, God, this just isn't, it sounds nothing like what we want it to sound like. So this pushed me and Nolly to sit down and be like, all right, well, we know what we need to do. We have this list of, you know, steps in the process, and we put together a plan, and we went to a couple of the bigger drum programming companies, and we pitched them. We were like, so, hey, we'd love to make a library for you. Here's what we want to do, and here's the sound. And we got some sort of, you know, discussion going about it, but eventually everybody was just like, no, like, you know, we don't do that. Like, we're not going to do that. So we decided, well, it's a tool that we want to have, so screw it, let's do it ourselves. You know, let's see what happens.
Love it. That's great.
I'd always joked I wanted Matt because I love his sound. I'm always programming with him in mind. I'm like, man, it'd be great to just have your sound just for me. Like, not even as something to sell, but just for our demo process.
Sure.
I just thought it would make Periphery albums better. It would make my life easier if I just had him playing his kit and that sound. Because we're pretty lucky, and I think it's why we get along, is like we like a lot of the same sounds. Like, we generally see eye to eye on stuff. So it would just be a shortcut for me. And that was a little bit kind of the process in the beginning. It was like, well, look, like, worst case, everyone hates it. I still get my kit. I still get the kit I want. So maybe a little bit selfishly, but like, that was kind of the consolation prize if it didn't really work out.
And I think that was the main goal. I think it was in the very lofty dream in our minds of like, well, maybe other people will benefit from this. And cool, if they do, if they're as inspired as we are about it, then that is only good for everybody. But it was totally based on our needs and a passion for doing this. And let's give it a go. So we recorded our first library on our own dime, just, you know, me and Nolly out of pocket. You know, at the time we started working with Dez, who is one of our co-founders, who had a lot of sort of intersection experience of music, being a musician, being in a band, also understanding the technology side. And I think it's important to note too that, so the 4 co-founders, we're all musicians first.
Right.
That's our passion, you know, and it really was sort of a self-fulfilling goal for each of us to have this tool that we could use ourselves. But we did the first library, and, you know, I remember sending you the first, you know, incarnation of it.
Yeah.
And me and Nolly like biting our nails like, I hope he likes it. And do you recall like
Yeah.
getting?
Oh, no, I remember. I was like, I finally have the snare I always wanted. I couldn't believe it. It almost seemed like too easy. I was just like, how have other people missed this? I don't know. Not trying to sound like cocky or anything. I was just so shocked at what a difference it made. And I was like, look, guys, like I'm just gonna use this forever. And it's not I'll use whatever product is the best product for the job. I don't care. And in the studio, anything goes. But it was just instantly, I was like, oh, this is it. This is what I wanted to hear. This is kind of exactly what I was hoping for. And maybe I wasn't expecting that because I'm like, look, it's our first stab at this. Like, if we don't get it right, yeah, sure, just keep at it. But I was like, no, this is good. There's some bugs we got to fix. It's software, so that's always just interface stuff. But just right off the bat, I was like, my God, like this is what I was looking for. This is what I wanted. I kind of had a sense that, like, man, I'm sure other people will like this too, just based off of how excited I was about it. But again, even if they weren't, I was like, well, at least I got exactly what I asked for out of it,
That's killer.
He was the barometer. Nolly and I were passionate about it, but I think honestly at the time you weren't even a part of the company, which was good. I mean, it was very early on there. Right. I say company very loosely, but at the time it was really me and Nolly focused on it for the most part. Des was involved, and Misha was sort of like our barometer and guinea pig to test it out on. So he didn't really have vested interest aside from his own wants of having a different.
I just wanted the kit.
Yeah.
I just wanted the kit to use.
So he could have said, this is dog crap, like it's not good,
right.
And that would have been an acceptable response because we didn't know what it was going to turn out to. But his response, I think, really helped to fuel us further to essentially turn it into a real company and take the step to put it out there publicly so that other people could get their hands on it. And, it was very quick after that the team was formed,
right.
That Misha was then, with us as a co-founder, and we put it out and it did way better than we ever thought that it could do. I give a lot of credit to just simply really the band. Right. For one, having an audience that is comprised of musicians and songwriters and producers that are looking for tools. We've developed signature products, so there was some level of trust there, I think, as well, of us putting our name behind something that we were putting out. But I keep going back to Misha and of course, and Nolly as well, of just like, these guys, I watch them scrutinize over every aspect of what they do when they're writing and producing music. If they think that this is good, then I have to believe them because I'm not the producer. I'm not the engineer. I just hit stuff. But they were like, we have to do this, we have to do this, we have to do this. So it's kind of how it started.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
Lots of cool stories there. And like we were talking about back in November when you were here about what musicians have to do to diversify their career, this is a great step of doing something else that's still in the vein of your band, your music and stuff, but great way to make extra money. You're giving back to the community with this great new product. I love that kind of thing where you think of other things to do in your musical sphere.
I should add to that though that it really was a passion project.
No, I think that's what it builds from. Yeah.
But because it's an interesting conversation because it is important to diversify. Obviously, it's difficult to make money with music and whatever, but it shouldn't be the thing where like you're out chasing like what's the next thing that can make me money. At least in my opinion, in my experience, it's always been the other way around where with these passion projects, like I really want this thing to exist. And then it turns out other people want it to exist too. And then it's like, oh, this thing has legs. So how do we really make the most of this and not squander this opportunity here? Sure. I really think the passion, I would urge people to follow their passions. Just like with music, this is something that was truly just a passion project. And like I said earlier, like worst case, I would still have been happy to have this kit for myself. And I think if you approach any sort of venture like that, where there is this aspect of, you know what, worst case, I'm still getting something really cool out of this. It'll be a cool thing to have explored or like a cool learning experience. Then that helps it be, in a way, a bit more pure. And it's not just like chasing the dollar signs.
Sure. When we launched, all of us at the time, and to this day, as you know, like we're involved in education. Right. So what we hadn't really seen before previously were, there wasn't a lot of education out there about these types of products or what was going on. So I was very passionate about pushing that as like, well, how can we market this aside from just being like, here's this new drum programming product from the guys in Periphery, yada, yada, yada. It's like, well, let's help people understand it. Let's show people how it works. So we were really, I was constantly, hitting up Misha, like, can we make a video on how you program drums? How do you make it sound realistic? How do you map this the right way so that it's easy out of the box for people to get up and running who may not be as savvy as a producer as Misha is or as Nali is? Like, right. Really trying to give away free education based around these products. And that is something to this day that, like, as far as one of my roles in the company is I'm always thinking about what questions are out there, how can we help and not, charge for it.
Sure.
Because we want this stuff to be easy to use. I think the goal is get up and running quickly so that you don't have to be halted in the creative process.
Sure.
So that was our goal from the beginning, and it sort of helped us even develop specific products along the way that make that easier for people, whether it's like the MIDI groove pack. So if you're not a drummer, you don't have to think about programming.
Right.
We have a whole new series of drum kits now that are genre-based. They're pre-processed, pre-mixed, good to go out of the box, as we say, so that if you are writing in a specific style, or even if you just want to, not have to think about or spend any time dialing in the sound, it starts off at a point where you could just get up and running with the drums right away. So there's a lot of stuff like that we're trying to make easy on people.
Yeah, there was this interesting point kind of early on. I think all of us being a bit more technical minded, we almost assumed like, oh man, the next library should maybe be the kitchen sink, right? Because that's maybe what I would want to some degree. But we realized that we were actually attracting a lot of beginners to this. But drum programming and all that, it's a bit of an esoteric art, and it's certainly intimidating for a lot of people. There's a lot of people who would want to get into it, right?
Yeah, doing it. Like
it's not an easy thing.
It's not an easy thing to do, and it's very hard. The barrier to entry is tough if you don't have someone sort of showing you the basics of it, right?
Right.
So that's where we sort of identified this opportunity of we could actually be the sort of gateway drug for drum programming, because now someone who is intimidated by it, well, they could take a look at the groove packs, and like you can now see a visual representation of what's going on, and you'd be like, okay, so that's how that works. That's interesting. I've learned stuff from looking at groove packs and just jamming along with them with the guitar, and it gave us this entirely other angle that we'd never thought about before. If you're just sort of writing guitar parts, it's cool, you're writing riffs. But if you have drums, then you can start to assemble a song. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of, what I like to think of it is a little bit, we're turning guitarists into producers, or into songwriters, and helping them with the tools that will hopefully in some cases help them grow into fully fledged producers, so that maybe if you started out being like, you know what, drum programming is crazy, and I don't want to learn how to mix it. Well, maybe you start out with one of the One Kit Wonder kits that we've got. It's pre-processed. You get some groove packs. But then eventually you're like, okay, I could turn the processing off and learn to process it myself. And you can watch our multitude of videos that show you how to do that. And then you try to program for yourself. And then it's like, oh, well, maybe I'll do Modern and Massive or Invasion or something like that, something that's a lot more in depth. And now, before you know it, you're programming drums, you're mixing, you're thinking about it in a completely different context. And before that, you were just playing guitar. That's pretty satisfying for me. That's kind of cool to see.
Sure, that's awesome. That's really cool.
It's cool to see the experts too that are like that started off as entry-level users. We have a forum on Facebook, like in a Facebook group for our customers and our users, and people that started off asking questions are now like authorities on these products, and they're helping each other, and it's just cool to see the level that
the community's growing. Yeah,
mm-hmm. It's awesome. Yeah, it's very cool to see. But cool. It's niche, and that's honestly that's why we're here.
Right.
Because the market is so much bigger, and if there's anybody to work with to help us grow, it's Sweetwater.
Sweet. It's great to have you guys here. So you have a small array of products for sale now, but there's a lot more coming, right? So let's talk about what the offering is going to be for Sweetwater customers.
Sure. So we actually started with a couple of our products via Sweetwater back in 2016, I believe. Okay. So just again, through our relationship, because of the band's relationship with Sweetwater, we were able to parlay that for GetGood Drums. And we started small with, our first original library, and then we got a couple more. But as we've grown our SKUs and our product offering, now we're at a point where it really makes sense to try to expand a lot more. So we're going to be, offering everything that we have now that we've built on our own platform via Sweetwater. So it's
Cool.
We have 3 or 4 of our full featured drum libraries, right? That give you the option to either turn on processing or just start raw, as Misha was talking about, and you can do the full processing yourself. We have a ton of MIDI groove pack. So we have
You guys, everything from country to all kinds of different things.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And then some are like based on specific drummers that have their unique sounds that we've sort of helped to try to put in one place. We have another new drum library that's coming that's part of our One Kit Wonder series. So and that's actually probably the most exciting thing to share with Sweetwater is, so we have these original drum libraries, but
Right.
as I was talking about before, we decided that we wanted to kind of focus on singular genre-based drum kits that were pre-processed, pre-mixed, so that you could literally just get them up and running and have great sounds right out of the box and not have to worry about the mixing or processing aspect. So we have 4 or 5 of those kits already. We have one called Modern Fusion. We have Aggressive Rock, which is more kind of like heavier rock based. We have a classic rock kit. We have a metal kit. We worked with our friends in this band called Architects from the UK to put out one of their drum sets. And now we're about to release a kit called Dry and Funky, which is sort of like a modern take on what might hear like with the band Wolfpack, or a drummer like Nate Smith, or what you might hear Mark Juliana playing, things like that. Very dry but very specific vibe. So, and there's a lot more kind of that we plan on releasing in that way. And then we also have expanded out into production tools. We have a compressor called Smash and Grab that's going to be up with Sweetwater now.
We wanted to take on the challenge of compression because that's also this weird dark art and science thing. And I know that the word compression to so many people is just so intimidating. To so many people, I don't know what it is, don't know how it works. And it's such an important tool for getting punchy drums and for getting sort of mix-ready drums, right? And we managed to get all the different flavors of compression that one might use, because you're gonna use a different compressor in different settings for compressing a kick drum than you would from a snare drum or parallel compression or room or anything like that, right? But again, it's giving people the option so that if you don't know anything about compression, you just set it to the mode for the track. Oh, this is on the kick track. All right, set to kick. And then you just adjust the threshold till it sounds good. And we wanted to demystify it and sort of make it as simple as possible. The idea is that it's all behind the scenes. And we actually updated it to have a pro mode so that if you know what you're doing, you can just go in and adjust it yourself. But it's not presented up front, so it's not as intimidating, because I know a lot of this stuff can be intimidating. I remember being intimidated by compressors and getting a 2-hour lesson on the history of compression by Nolly one day and trying to absorb all of that. That guy knows his stuff, but you don't necessarily need to be able to take advantage of that. Sure. I think it's one of our coolest products. When I say I use it on basically every channel, I'm not kidding. And I don't use it on every channel because I have to.
Right.
Again, I'll use whatever I want. But when I say it replaced probably about 4 or 5 different compression plugins in my mix, I'm not kidding. It's just changed my mixes and allowed me to get exactly what I want using just one plugin. And I love the fact that someone who doesn't know anything about compression would be able to get very, very good results by literally turning 2 knobs.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool.
It's amazing how fast technology has come in such a short time. Just back in the mid-90s, I was making records, and we were still, which is still great to do to this day, but sitting in front of giant consoles with racks and racks of outboard gear. And just 20 years later, which is not that much time, you could do everything on a laptop and get such amazing sounds with one knob on a product like yours and make really great sounding pieces of music with your headphones, in your bedroom. So the technology has gone so far. I think it's amazing. So I congratulate you on creating such cool products that bring music to life for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the more that this kind of stuff is democratized, the more good music you get. The less steps there are between the ideas in your head and getting it out into the world, the better, I think. means that we have more good music to listen to down the road, right?
Very good. Yeah.
We've recently really taken a larger step in plan to even go further with guitar IR libraries, so that kind of, again, for guitarists, if you don't want to fuddle around with trying to get the perfect tone, we can essentially provide that for you through these impulse responses. I didn't know what that was
Right.
before we started trying to make this. So can you explain it? So
Yeah, yeah.
So that if there are people like me that don't know what an impulse response is or what an IR stands for, we can demystify it a little bit.
So if you ever hear an amp without a cab, it's a pretty horrible sound. You have all the high end, you have everything going on, and the cab is actually like killing a lot of frequencies, and it's shaping it in a very specific way. But that's what we hear as guitar tone, right? And the speaker influences that, the cabinet itself influences that, the microphone you use influences that, and the position that you use influences that, maybe even the room that it's in. So what you can do is you can set up this exact thing, and that's what we'll have. We'll have this mic, this cab, this speaker, this exact position, and that will get captured using a sine wave sweep, so that you're getting the whole frequency range, and it's capturing that moment in time, right? And then you can recall that. Anything you put through that will have that sound imparted on it, and in theory, will sound the same as if you were running through that exact setup. If you do it well, it does. So that's what we were doing, and then we're capturing every position, every combination, and we have an interface that does it all for you, so that you get this friendly thing. Oh, I picked this cab and this mic and this position. Cool, good to go. And on the back end, it's choosing the correct file for it, and it will give you that ultimate setup with just a click.
Sure. So I find that stuff amazing. I've made a couple of drum library things in the past, and obviously you doing this thing for GetGood Drums, you sat behind your drum kit and you've hit that snare drum 400 times at the same velocity. It takes a lot of patience to capture impulse responses and drum samples, and to turn it into a product as good as what you guys are turning these products into. It's like the patience alone to turn this into a business is amazing, and the four of you have really done a great job with this.
We really, this sounds funny, but we do this for ourselves, so that we can have the best tools for us to use. And who knows, objectively, people might not like it, and that's okay. We aim for what we like, what sounds good to us. And if it does resonate with other people, then that's amazing.
It's almost like the way we make music too, right? You make music, at least the way I sort of describe it. You make your music for yourself and put your passion into it, and then hopefully it translates to people. Obviously, you guys have translated your music to a lot of fans throughout the world, so
totally
it works.
That's a great example, because that is kind of the approach, is just we're going to do it for ourselves, and we believe in it, and hopefully that means that other people will have that same sort of reaction to it.
So our mission, honestly, is to kind of bring to you what we have, which is as little hurdles as possible to get to our creativity, to take the inspiration in the moment when we're writing music and get the sounds we want as fast as possible. We're just trying to offer any type of musician that may shop here at Sweetwater, no matter whether they're a younger musician, a more experienced musician, whether they're making music for fun, whether they are in a band, whether they're making music at home in their parents' basement. No matter what it is, we can help with the drum side of it and make it easy to get up and running. And as I sort of said, Sweetwater is an institution. Like there's nothing like it, in my opinion. That's why I keep coming back here. Because I just want to be here and see the operation. But I feel like how lucky we are to have the opportunity to try to grow our company through this institution is a massive win if we can do it. And I know how passionate the team of sales engineers at Sweetwater are. So if we can convince them that what we're saying is true and that it is a good product, then hopefully we can get it out there to more people and hopefully inspire a much faster process for people writing music. So that's why we are now going to be bringing everything that we have over to Sweetwater. And you can check out any one of these products that we're discussing today at sweetwater.com. The sales engineers can always help you, and we're always around too, through them, or there's definitely ways to reach out as well, so that we can continue to help make things as easy as possible, so that you don't have to worry about these tedious details, and you can make the music that you want to make, hopefully with the best sounds possible, and we'll just keep doing our best to make sure that it happens. So go to sweetwater.com and should be able to get everything you need from there from us.
Matt and Misha, thanks so much for coming to Sweetwater and telling everybody about these killer products from Get Good Drums. I wish you guys all the best. And like Matt said, if you want any more information on any Get Good Drum product, contact your Sweetwater sales engineer. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.